What's going on, guys? Tobin here with you. Thanks for checking out the channel. Much appreciated. Got a new Porpoise pod out now for all my Dolph fans out there. I think you guys will dig it. Would appreciate it if you guys could subscribe, give it a listen. I'm not even making you guys do a review. That feels like homework, but I think you guys will like it. Do it with my guy, Alejandro Solana, about 3 episodes a week. Usually the episodes are like a half hour. It's really digestible quick, and I think you guys will have some fun with it for all our Dolph fans out there. Meanwhile, I'll put the link right there in the description. Tobin and Leroy radio show, where you guys can find us there as well. Silly sauce is flowing all the time. Very excited. We're going to talk to Gilbert Burns this week, who is not only a UFC badass, but a huge Miami Dolphins fan. So I'm excited to have Gilbert on the show, talk a little Fins, talk a little fighting with him. My worlds collide. I always love that. I love it when talk Fins and fighting. I love talking Heat and fighting. I got to talk to Kyle Lowry about that stuff. So looking forward to talking to Dorino about that. Meanwhile, wanted to get to this. So Mike McDaniel responded. He had his press conference on Monday, and Xavien Howard had a quote that was something to the effect of, let me get the exact thing here so I'm not misquoting him, but he said that the offense, he says, quote, "We got to figure this out. We've got to score points. You can't win without scoring points on offense." So, kind of like the first criticism from Xavien Howard of the other side of the football, I would say, that was for the most part, a winning performance by the defense. Yes, Xavien got torched by Justin Jefferson and Thielen on that one drive, but for the most part, we know that he's playing hampered. And this is a guy who I feel like he has the credentials, even though he has not played maybe up to his standard, if you will, this year. I think most Dolph fans recognize that this guy is a franchise great. I don't think we've had a lot of them, since, the days of Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas. I think you've had probably Cam Wake, maybe like a year of Brent Grimes, and all of Xavien Howard's career is like, you could look to those guys and say they're bona fide the best in the league at what they do. Top 3, top 5, at worst has been like, a solidified top 10. But, I do think that for Xavien to call that out is an interesting thing, because I don't feel like the Dolphins have had a complete game all around from everybody. I think that they've had games where every part of the team has contributed to wins, where, there were drives where they were giving up a lot. The Ravens game is a good example of this, where the defense was as piss poor as you could get early on, but they had key stops, which led to the offense getting their comebacks. I think that the Bills game, very bend, don't break. The offense wasn't able to have the ball a lot, and the defense was out on the field a ton, but they were able to always be able to keep the Bills basically off the board. And I think recently, the Jets game, that wasn't a good performance by the defense in a lot of spots, but they were also put in some rough spots because the offense wasn't putting up any points. Skylar Thompson with big key turnovers. There's been really key turnovers the last 3 games that have put the defenses in a rough spot, and they haven't been able to respond. They've almost felt like team backbreakers. So we've definitely seen a Dolphins offense that has been more explosive from a yard standpoint. We see the numbers that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are putting up. Obviously, there's some excitement here, but there are some inconsistencies. One, when they get into the red zone, not a guarantee they can get things done. And I wonder if that has something to do with the idea that your 2 best weapons are really big space guys that, need a lot of the field to operate to make themselves as effective. They're not the tallest dudes in the world. And I do think that that's probably a place where Mike Gesicki can come and do some more things. But for Xavien Howard to call this out was interesting, and I was curious to hear what Mike McDaniel had to say about his cornerback, basically calling out another unit on the field, even though he is a captain of the team, not just of the defense. But here is what his reaction was.
I believe with the context that X was speaking on, I 100% agree with him, and I think every player does too. Like, you have to score more points than the opponent to win, and we're in the business of winning. So that is without a doubt. Like, I totally agree with him. I also know where X is kind of where his footing is with regard to the team, and he is he is stating what everyone is saying, which is that we need to put together a complete football game to get the results we want. So I appreciate that. Really, all the guys really want to win, and speaking to the captains today, there's without a shadow of a doubt complete confidence in our ability to do what it takes to win on both sides of the ball, and I think when guys are more demanding of themselves than other people, which really all 7 of our captains are, their sentiments do not go unnoticed and are supported because they lead by the best example you can give, which is accountability, personal accountability over everything.
And look, Xavien Howard doing everything that he can to be out there on the field, so you appreciate that effort from him. I don't think Mike McDaniel takes that stuff personally. I think that, first of all, it's not like he's, what was it back in the day? What was it, like Reggie Bush saying the team sucks right now, and Jeremiah Bell took great offense to that. I don't think this is one of those things. I just think it's in a moment, it's 3 straight losses. You're trying, you're scrambling, you're trying to go for figuring things out. And something like that comes out from one of your best players. I think that Xavien knows that there's been days where the defense hasn't come through and played up to snuff, and I think that was a case with this on the other side of things, that the defense thought that they put up an effort that was good enough against a talented offensive Vikings team. And, we really haven't seen that from we haven't seen this full complete game from the Dolphins. I would say the most complete game wasn't even really the Patriots game. I would say the Bills is probably the best version of that, because with even all the yards they gave up, the offense was efficient in their ability when they had the football to come up with big plays, and then the defense never really broke. But, the Dolphins find themselves right now, they're averaging about 22 points per game, which has them about middle of the pack right now, just on the bottom half of the league as far as points per game right now. And for yards, total yards per game right now, the Dolphins find themselves in the top, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're top 10. So there's definitely a lot of climbing that can happen as far as yardage is concerned that they're putting up per game as opposed to points. And they need to get more efficient with that. And that certainly does need to grow. Certainly the defense is not infallible here, but it's interesting hearing that from Xavien, that he wants to see that. And I think that, he's speaking something that's different. And I think that many other people on the team would probably come back and say, yeah, well, it'd be nice if you didn't get, gutted up the middle, seemingly in these backbreaking moments, really come through when you need. But it's going to be interesting. Now, I do think that that's cool that Mike McDaniel handled that, I think, the right way. This is an interesting week for Mike McDaniel in that, you have the Brian Flores thing. That's going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing all week. And it was an interesting thing. I had a guy on social media hit me up, Dan, who was like, I don't know how Flores went from the only back-to-back winning season, sweeping the Patriots, and being fired for not tanking, to being public enemy worst guy ever to y'all. It's like he's Gase or Philbin SMH. And I'll just say this when it comes to Dan's point on Flores. One, I didn't think Flores should have been fired. I didn't think that he did a job that was warranted of being fired. But hearing a lot of the stuff that has come out, and especially with relationship to his quarterback and Tua Tagovailoa, and the lack of support that he had for him publicly, and the lack of support it seemed that he had for him privately, I just don't know how that served him as being head of a football team, to be that rats off a ship off a guy. And what was going to be the move that really made him happy? I mean, if you believe all these reports, didn't want to go with Tom Brady. He wasn't very happy with Tua Tagovailoa. He kind of wanted to go after Deshaun Watson for a time, which is, super risky with all the baggage that it had. So those are the things that you're just like, well, all right, for a guy that, yes, put up a good record, especially his last couple of years, and the reasons that he got fired, was it strictly a Tua thing? I don't know. My theory's always been that the Dolphins wanted to go in this Sean Payton or go in this Tom Brady direction, one of the reasons Sean Payton was tied to him is because if there was an initial snub from Flores the second time around, I didn't think Tom Brady wanted to play for him. And so then they were just going to give Flores the boot. But I didn't think that his last 2 seasons were warranted of being fired. And I do think that Mike McDaniel is one of those guys in the rare case where his rating amongst Dolphin fans has been so high and so, everything is just the greatest this guy does. Everything that he touches, he's quirky, he's wacky, he's got a great relationship with his players. I do think that he's now kind of facing his first real test of adversity. How are people going to respond to him being quote unquote different? So how is it, that he's going to handle all of that, all of the adversity and things that have come forth? But I think that the number one thing that he has done is he's empowered his quarterback. That really had a great result over the first 3 weeks of the season when Tua was healthy. The results the first 3 weeks were really, really good, obviously. And even, I would say mostly the Bengals and the Vikings game. These are games where they've been in it. We've definitely seen some changes in identity. And, fair's fair, they've been dealing with a ton of injuries. They've been dealing with a lot of they've been dealing with a lot of their best players falling apart. And that's definitely played a role in it as well. So I think for Mike McDaniel, the other piece of pressure that he has to deal with, and maybe some of the noise that comes with the storylines of this week, is that Brian Flores was a guy who was here where the teardown was here. Whether he wants to say, he knew the team was deliberately tanking or whatever, we all know what the storylines were. The Dolphins were risking the health of players. The Dolphins were embarrassing. Minkah Fitzpatrick quits on the team. And he wasn't dealt the same hand that Mike McDaniel was. Mike McDaniel got himself a team that is positioned to win games in this league. Brian Flores was not. There was more of a buildup. Now, the way he handled that buildup with relying more on Ryan Fitzpatrick than Tua Tagovailoa, yeah, those are some really questionable things in the makeup of your job and leading of men, and the way that he seemingly went through coaches like he went through underwear, and the guy's general lack of patience, it seemed like, in all areas of running a team. I don't know how that would have led to running an organization. Did he seem like he was a pretty damn good game day coach and having a handle on things like penalties and being able to get his team to adjust in the middle of a year? And yeah, I think that he's talented at, but being the head of an organization and running things and having the patience for some of that stuff, I don't know. I think that's to be determined, whatever his next stop ends up being after he has this stint here in Pittsburgh. But for Mike McDaniel, the interesting thing with going into a week where you're taking on the team that has Brian Flores on their staff, he definitely has been handed, a quarterback project, which is something that he's got to work on, and that's kind of the basis of why he got the job. But all pro receiver, a seemingly dynamic second year gonna be all pro receiver in Jalen Waddle, a top whatever tight end that you want to put Mike Gesicki, that he's kind of, maybe, I don't want to say they've butted heads, but they haven't quite figured out the best way to use him, and they're kind of figuring that out in the midst of week 6, and there's still trade rumors around him and all that stuff. And then on the defensive side of things, like, Josh Boyer, it's been up and down. Certainly there's been health concerns in the secondary that he can't help, but we saw some of these lulls last year, and there were questions of, all right, was there a changing of hands in the middle of the year? That's been negated, obviously, going into this year, but was there more control taken over by Brian Flores? Did he have a hand in the turnaround of the defense in the middle of the year? Remains to be known, remains to be seen. We'll get to it, but an interesting week that's going to have a lot of juice surrounding it for Dolphins, the Dolphin franchise. A big week. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be goosies galore, seeing the patches, the throwbacks, the Zonk. Oh, Zonk live tweeting from the stadium. Who's not going to love that? Is he going to be there? I hope he's there. I saw that they did some long ass Zoom. We had like Zonk rolling at the stadium today. Not the stadium, at the station, excuse me. And I was like, man, this Zonk, he's just going. I'm like looking at the transcripts. I haven't even got a chance to look back at the sound. I'm just like, man, every one of these Zonk answers just looks like a story. Like there's this one somebody asked about like younger readers, and it's like the whole transcript is longer than the page of my screen. I'm just like, whew, you had to buckle up for Zonk story time, dude. That's something. Can't wait for it though. Look, it's gonna be a fun week. Continuing to follow this and get to it. But who doesn't love a little juice to game week?